What if the strategies you mastered and the force that crushed empires suddenly failed? In the late 13th century, the Mongol Empire appeared unbeatable. Armies fell, cities burned, and millions were left in ruin. Yet in a tiny kingdom called Viet, the Mongols faced a nightmare. Everything they relied on, brilliant tactics, elite cavalry, fear, became useless. Few armies in history spread terror like the Mongols. By 1285, their empire stretched from the frozen Siberian steppe to the scorching sands of Persia. Horse archers rained arrows with deadly accuracy. Siege weapons tore through fortified walls like they were paper. Entire nations collapsed within weeks. To the rest of the world, the Mongols were a force of nature, unstoppable and merciless. But even the mightiest behemoth can have a blind spot. Hungry for more, the Mongols turned their gaze toward a small realm in Southeast Asia. Viet seemed like an afterthought, just another place to conquer on the way to total domination. But they had no idea what waited for them. Decades earlier, the Mongols tested these waters and lost. In 1258, their invasion of Viet ended in unexpected humiliation. Rumors swirled that Mongol generals returned home furious, reeling from an opponent they had dismissed as weak. Determined never to repeat the same mistake, they spent years plotting revenge. Meanwhile, the Tran dynasty, the ruling family of Viet, knew the Mongols would be back. They studied their enemy's tactics. They observed the thunderous cavalry charges and unstoppable invasions. And they prepared quietly for the day the Mongols returned. But preparing was one thing. Surviving the full might of the Mongol Empire was another. In 1284, Kublai Khan unleashed an invasion far greater than before. He put his own son, Prince Togon, in charge, equipping him with a massive force that dwarfed the original. Legends say there were 500,000 soldiers, including veterans, who had stormed across Asia. The Mongols vowed to make Viet pay. Their plan was clear: strike from multiple directions, overwhelm the kingdom's defenses, and force a total surrender. Yet behind the scenes, the Tran dynasty waited with a secret advantage, a blueprint for how to turn the land itself into a weapon. Still, the kingdom needed more than strategy to survive a storm of this size. Unlike the wide-open plains where Mongol cavalry thrived, Vietnam's terrain was a maze of jungles, rivers, and flooded fields. The Tran generals turned every inch of it into a barrier. Narrow mountain passes became natural choke points, and thick forests became hideouts for guerrilla strikes. Villagers cooperated to move supplies beyond the Mongols' reach, leaving empty storehouses behind. What really crippled the invaders was Viet's understanding of its waterways. The rivers were lifelines, used for both travel and food. The Vietnamese lured Mongol fleets into channels rigged with hidden stakes and traps that only revealed themselves when the tide sank. Mongol horses grew weak in the humid heat, and supply lines stretched too thin across unfriendly terrain. Every step forward pushed them deeper into a kingdom that refused to meet them on their terms. For a moment, it looked like the Mongols had won. They stormed the capital, Thang Long, envisioning a triumphant parade through city streets. But instead of glory, they found a ghost town. No civilians to capture, no supplies to seize. The Tran court had evacuated, leaving behind only emptiness. It was the perfect psychological blow. On paper, the Mongols held the city. In reality, they had nothing. Food shortages worsened, morale plummeted, and they still had no sign of the royal family they came to crush. For an army that thrived on momentum, being stuck in a deserted capital felt like the ground was crumbling beneath them. Yet the harshest defeat was still on its way. Desperate to regroup, the Mongols pinned their hopes on the rivers and coasts. If they could secure a safe route for reinforcements and supplies, maybe they could force Viet to submit. But at the Bach Dang River, the Vietnamese had set a final brutal trap. Wooden spikes lay hidden beneath the water's surface, timed perfectly with the tides. When Mongol warships ventured in at high tide, it looked clear. But as the water receded, the spikes pierced hulls, turning once proud vessels into wreckage. Meanwhile, Vietnamese warships attacked from all sides, using rafts loaded with incendiaries to set Mongol decks ablaze. It wasn't just a battle, it was a carefully orchestrated nightmare, and the Mongols had nowhere to run. In the chaos, hundreds of ships sank. Thousands of soldiers drowned, starved, or fell in ambushes. Stories claim Prince Togon escaped in total disgrace, some say hidden in a makeshift container to avoid detection. The unstoppable war machine had been shredded by a smaller force that refused to break. After 3 invasions, the Mongols finally abandoned their dream of conquering Viet. Kublai Khan's empire, which had once shaken the world, was forced to accept that power. Alone wasn't enough. So what do you do when your undefeated strategies fall apart? The Mongols learned the hard way: adapt or be undone. Viet transformed its rivers, forests and mountains into a fortress and turned enemy arrogance into a fatal weakness. When an underdog uses every ounce of cunning and resilience, even the most fearsome empire can be brought to its knees. And that's the real takeaway. Sometimes the greatest weapon isn't brute force, but the will to fight on your own terms. If you enjoyed this look at how one tiny kingdom outsmarted the largest empire on Earth, consider subscribing for more extraordinary stories from history.